Dr. Kim Ji-won stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching the massive alien ship approach Earth with a mix of excitement and dread. The Talon vessel dwarfed anything humans had built, its crystalline surface reflecting sunlight in dazzling patterns. After decades of searching the stars for other intelligent life, first contact had finally arrived. "Are you ready?" asked Captain Park Hyunbin, joining her at the window. His usually confident face showed the weight of representing humanity in this historic moment. "As ready as anyone could be," Ji-won replied, straightening her uniform. As Earth's leading xenolinguist, she had spent the last week frantically preparing since the Talon ship first appeared near Jupiter. The translation algorithms should work, assuming their communication follows any patterns we can recognize. The first meeting exceeded all expectations. The Talons, tall, elegant beings with silvery skin and graceful movements, already understood several Earth languages. They explained they had been monitoring human broadcasts for decades before deciding to make contact. Initial diplomatic exchanges went smoothly. The aliens shared remarkable technologies and invited a human delegation to visit their ship. World leaders celebrated what seemed like the beginning of a beneficial relationship with an advanced civilization. But as weeks passed, subtle signs of condescension emerged. Ji-won noticed it first during a cultural exchange session. She presented information about Earth's diverse musical traditions, from classical orchestras to indigenous folk songs to modern electronic compositions. The Talon cultural attaché, who called himself Liaison Seren, listened politely before responding. "Your species shows remarkable creativity despite your neurological limitations. Perhaps in another few thousand years, you'll develop more sophisticated artistic expressions." Captain Park's jaw tightened, but he maintained his diplomatic smile. "We're quite proud of our artistic achievements." "As you should be," Seren replied with what appeared to be genuine kindness. "Just as we admire the clever tools created by primitive cultures throughout the galaxy." This pattern continued across all interactions. The Talons shared incredible technological insights, but treated humans like gifted children. They referred to Earth's greatest scientific minds as promising, and described human emotion as charmingly undeveloped. During the third month of diplomatic relations, Ji-won was granted access to the Talon Cultural Archives, a vast database of their history and artistic works spanning thousands of years. She spent days absorbing as much as possible, looking for ways to better understand their civilization. "Their music is incredible," she told Hyunbin over coffee in the Earth delegation's quarters. "The mathematical complexity is beyond anything we've created, but something feels missing. It's technically perfect, but soulless?" Hyunbin suggested. "Exactly, like it's been engineered rather than felt." Later that week, Ji-won attended a formal reception where Talon officials mingled with human diplomats. The atmosphere was cordial, but strained. She overheard two Talons speaking to each other, their translators active but seemingly forgotten. "Their neural structures are remarkably simple," one said. "It's astonishing they've achieved spaceflight." "Indeed, their emotions are so primitive, all that unnecessary intensity. No wonder their history is filled with conflict." Ji-won pretended not to hear, moving toward a display of ancient Talon artifacts. The exhibit contained ceremonial objects labeled as pre-unification era. One piece caught her attention, a curved instrument with symbols that resembled musical notation. Without thinking, she began humming an old Korean folk song her grandmother had taught her. The melody was simple but haunting, passed down through generations. The room suddenly went quiet. Ji-won looked up to find every Talon staring at her, their normally silver skin flushed with deep violet hues. "Where did you learn that sequence?" demanded Seren, approaching rapidly. Confused, Ji-won stopped humming. "It's just an old song from my homeland on Earth. My grandmother taught it to me." The Talons exchanged glances. Their normally fluid movements became stiff, uncomfortable. "This cultural exchange is concluded for today," announced the lead ambassador abruptly. The artifacts were quickly removed, and human delegates were politely but firmly escorted from the exhibition area. Later, As Jiwan analyzed recordings of the incident, she noticed something odd in the Talon artifacts. Patterns that resembled the melodic structure of not just Korean folk songs, but many traditional human melodies from around the world. Something about that song frightened them, she told Hyunbin as they reviewed the footage in their secure meeting room. Their biological readings went haywire. Heart rates, brain activity, everything spiked. Hyunbin frowned. What could be threatening about a simple folk song? I don't know, Jiwan said, but I'm going to find out. The next day, when Jiwan requested access to pre-unification historical records, her permissions were denied. When she asked Seren about it, he claimed it was a technical issue that would be resolved soon, but the access never returned. What had started as excitement about alien contact was rapidly becoming something else. A mystery centered on why Earth's supposedly primitive music had caused such alarm among their advanced visitors. And as diplomatic, relations continued to deteriorate under the weight of Talon condescension, Jiwan couldn't shake the feeling that the answer might be humanity's only leverage in an increasingly unequal relationship. They practically threw me out, Jiwan told Lee Minho as they huddled in the small research lab aboard the human diplomatic vessel. 3 days had passed since the incident at the reception, and the Talons had been avoiding her ever since. Minho, the mission's data specialist, rubbed his tired eyes. He'd been analyzing the recordings non-stop since Jiwan shared her suspicions. Play the recording again, he said, fingers flying across the holographic interface. I want to enhance the audio and watch their reactions in slow motion. The screen showed Jiwan standing near the artifacts, humming her grandmother's song. The moment the melody began, the Talon's skin changed color dramatically. Look at these biometric readings, Minho said, pulling up a secondary display. Their neural activity spiked by 340%. Heart rates doubled. Whatever you did, it triggered something like fear? No, not exactly fear. Something deeper. But why would an old Korean folk song affect them like that? Jiwan wondered, leaning closer to the screen. Captain Park entered the lab without knocking, his expression grim. The Talons have just restricted our access to half the ship. They're claiming it's for routine maintenance, but it's obviously connected to what happened. Jiwan nodded. They've blocked my credentials to their historical database too. Then we need to find another way in, Park said firmly. This isn't just academic curiosity anymore. Earth needs to understand who we're dealing with. That night, while most of the human delegation slept, Jiwan and Minho implemented their plan. Using maintenance credentials provided by a sympathetic Talon engineer named Nevan, one of the few who seemed genuinely interested in human culture, they accessed a secondary archive terminal. We've got about 20 minutes before the system detects the unusual login pattern, Minho whispered, though they were alone in the dimly lit maintenance corridor. What exactly are we looking for? Anything about resonance sequences or their musical history, Jiwan replied, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. She had spent weeks learning their computer systems and could now navigate them almost as well as a Talon. The search quickly returned thousands of results, but most were heavily encrypted. Minho deployed a translation algorithm he had secretly developed, and slowly fragments of information became readable. Look at this, Jiwan gasped, pointing to a file labeled Restricted Historical Analysis, Pre-Unification Harmonic Weapons. The file contained references to something called resonance warfare, used during the Talon unification era, a period roughly 3,000 Earth years ago, when separate Talon factions fought for dominance of their home world. These patterns, Minho said, displaying ancient Talon musical notations side by side with Earth's traditional musical scales. They're structurally similar to dozens of Earth musical traditions, not just Korean but Celtic, African, Native American. How is that possible? Jiwan felt a chill run down her spine. It says here that these resonance sequences were used to strengthen morale and coordinate warriors during battle. They called them war songs. As they dug deeper, the picture became clearer. Ancient Talons had used specific musical patterns to tap into their species' highly sensitive neural structures, creating powerful emotional and physiological responses. These war songs had been central to their military strategy for centuries. "Wait," Minho said suddenly. "Look at the dates. After the final unification war, there's a gap in the musical record, then this directive from the newly formed Unity Council. The directive was clear. All recordings of the ancient war songs were to be destroyed. Teaching or performing them became prohibited. Over generations, the songs were systematically erased from Talon cultural memory. They banned their own music," Jiwan whispered. "But why?" The answer came in a heavily redacted scientific report. Prolonged exposure to resonance sequences creates unpredictable neural pathway development and encourages individualistic emotional responses inconsistent with unity principles. Minho looked at Jiwan. They were afraid of their own emotional responses. The songs made them feel too much. And somehow, humans independently created music with similar patterns, Jiwan added. Music that can still trigger those responses. In Talons. The terminal suddenly flashed red. "We've been detected," Minho said, quickly disconnecting their device. "We need to go." They barely made it back to the human quarters before security protocols activated, sealing sections of the ship. By morning, tensions had escalated. The Talon leadership announced that the cultural exchange program would be temporarily modified and requested that humans refrain from performing music in Talon presence. When questioned, the aliens cited biological incompatibilities that made human music physically uncomfortable for their species. "They're lying," Park said during an emergency meeting with Earth's diplomatic team. "Dr. Kim and Lee have discovered something important." Jiwan shared their findings, explaining how human music seemed to activate dormant neural pathways in Talons, pathways their society had deliberately suppressed. "We need to present this research to the Talon Science Council," she concluded. "If we can understand this connection, maybe we can improve relations rather than letting them deteriorate." 2 days later, Jiwan and Minho stood before the Talon Science Council, presenting their carefully prepared analysis. They emphasized potential benefits of understanding these unexpected biological connections between their species. The response was immediate and harsh. Their research access was completely revoked. The human delegation was informed that certain areas of study were not conducive to productive relations. As they left the council chamber, Nivan approached them quietly. "What you've discovered is dangerous," the Talon whispered. "But not for the reasons they claim. Some of us remember the old stories. Meet me in sub-level 3 at the next rest cycle. There's more you need to know." The sub-level 3 meeting point was a narrow maintenance corridor bathed in dim blue light. Jiwan and Minho arrived first, nervously checking over their shoulders every few seconds. Captain Park had insisted on joining them, standing guard at the corridor entrance. "This feels like a trap," Park whispered, hand hovering near the small defensive weapon hidden in his jacket. "Nevin's different from the others," G1 replied. "He actually asks questions about Earth. He's curious." They fell silent as footsteps approached. Nevin appeared, accompanied by another Talon G1 recognized as a medical researcher named Liren. Both looked nervous, their skin shifting through subtle color patterns that indicated anxiety. "We must be quick," Nevin said without greeting. "What you've discovered has caused great concern among the leadership caste." Liren stepped forward. "I've been studying human biology since first contact. Your findings about musical resonance patterns match my own research, but the implications go much deeper than you realize." The Talons led them to a small laboratory, hidden behind a maintenance panel. Inside, holographic displays showed comparative scans of human and Talon brain structures. "Our ancestors had specialized neural structures for processing harmonic resonance," Liren explained, pointing to ancient Talon brain scans. These structures allowed them to use sound to create powerful group cohesion during battle. The war songs weren't just for morale. They literally synchronized brain activity across hundreds of warriors simultaneously. "And modern Talons don't have these structures?" Minho asked. "Most don't," Nivan said quietly. After unification, our society pursued harmony through biological means. Selective breeding and later genetic modification removed these structures from our population. The leadership claimed these changes would prevent future conflicts. Lyran pulled up new scans. But humans have something similar, though structured differently. Your brain's response to music activates similar pathways, creating emotional bonds, synchronizing group activities. So our folk music accidentally recreates the effects of their ancient war songs, Jiwan said, understanding dawning. That's why they reacted so strongly when I was humming. Exactly, Nevan confirmed. You casually produced sound patterns that our ancestors used as weapons, patterns designed to elicit specific emotional and physiological responses. Park leaned against the wall, processing the implications. Is that why they're suddenly treating us like a threat? Lyran's skin darkened with concern. The leadership fears what they don't understand. For generations we've been taught that emotional resonance leads to chaos and conflict. Your species embraces these emotional connections openly, through your music, your art, even your disagreements. Most Talons never experience the intensity of emotion that humans consider normal, Nevan added. Those few born with more active resonance structures are usually identified early and placed in specialized roles away from the general population. Jiwan remembered the artifacts she'd seen. The instrument I was examining before I started humming was that used to create war songs? Yes, Nevan said. A resonance amplifier from the final unification war. Most were destroyed, but a few remain in historical collections. Lyran pulled up another display showing Earth's major musical traditions, mapped against ancient Talon resonance patterns. The similarities were striking. How is this possible? Minho asked. We evolved on different planets, light years apart. That's what fascinates me, Lyran said, eyes brightening with scientific curiosity. Perhaps certain mathematical patterns of sound are universally effective at triggering emotional responses in complex neural systems, a case of convergent evolution. Or perhaps, Nevan suggested hesitantly, there was contact between our species long ago, before recorded history. The implications hung in the air between them. Before they could discuss further, an alert flashed on Nevan's communication device. We need to return to our posts, he said urgently. Security protocols have been heightened. The leadership is holding an emergency session. About us? Park asked. Lyran's expression turned grim. About all humans. Take this, she said, handing Minho a small data crystal. Complete analysis of the resonance patterns and their effects on Talon physiology. You may need it. As they prepared to leave separately, Nevan grabbed Jiwan's arm. Be careful. Some, in the military caste, are calling humans neurologically dangerous because of your natural resonance abilities. They fear what would happen if humans learned to use these abilities intentionally. Back in the safety of their quarters, Choi Do-hyun, Earth's lead xenobiologist, examined the data crystal's contents with growing concern. This confirms what I've been suspecting, he said, pointing to comparative DNA sequences. Their ancestors had specialized neural structures for processing harmonic resonance, much like our limbic system responds to music but more pronounced. And now? Asked Jiwan. Talon evolution and selective breeding eliminated most of these structures. According to this data, they systematically removed all recordings of these songs from their archives after the wars. Do-hyun's face was grave. They feared the emotional power of their own music. Captain Park's communication device chimed with an encrypted message. His expression darkened as he read it. That was Admiral Kang Sunhwa, he said. Our long-range communications just intercepted disturbing transmissions from the Talon homeworld. The military caste has formally classified humans as a neurological threat and has authorized a preemptive strike on Earth's outer colonies. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. How long do we have? Jiwan finally asked. Their fleet is already mobilizing, Park replied grimly. The first attack could come within days. Minho looked up from the data he was studying. There's something else here. The resonance doesn't just affect their emotions. It appears to activate dormant neural pathways, Pathways their society has been trying to suppress for generations. Like waking up parts of their brain they've been trying to keep asleep, Do-hyun said. Ji-won stared at the ancient Talon musical notations on the screen, so similar to Earth's traditional songs. If our music affects them this strongly by accident, she said slowly, imagine what it could do if we used it deliberately. Captain Park straightened. Are you suggesting we use music as a weapon? Not a weapon, Ji-won corrected. A reminder of who they once were before they tried to engineer emotion out of their society. The room fell silent again, but this time with a different energy, the first glimmer of hope. Let's get this information to Earth, Park decided. And pray we have enough time to prepare. The emergency council meeting on Earth was tense, faces grim as Admiral Kang Soon-hwa delivered the news. Representatives from every major nation sat around the circular table, united by the common threat. The Talon fleet has already departed their homeworld, she said, pulling up a holographic display showing the movement of alien ships. At their current speed, they'll reach our outer colonies in the Epsilon system within 72 hours. General, Wu slammed his fist on the table. How many ships do we have that can intercept? Not enough, Sun-hwa replied flatly. Their technology outclasses ours. A direct military confrontation would be disastrous. We don't have enough ships to evacuate. The outer colonies, she continued, zooming in on the settlements housing over 20,000 colonists. Even if we started now, we'd only get about 30% of the population out before the Talons arrive. The room erupted in heated discussion. Some advocated for immediate military response despite the odds, others for diplomatic appeals, and a few suggested surrender might be the only option to prevent bloodshed. Ji-won, who had been quietly listening, finally stood up. All eyes turned to her. We don't evacuate, she said firmly. We broadcast. The room fell silent. Dr. Kim, explain, prompted Earth's Secretary General. Ji-won took a deep breath. The Talons have a biological vulnerability we've discovered. Their species once used specific sound patterns, war songs, to coordinate during battle and strengthen their resolve. These patterns affect their neural pathways in powerful ways. She nodded to Minho, who projected the data they'd gathered. Over thousands of years, the Talon leadership deliberately bred these sensitivities out of their population and erased the songs from their cultural memory. But the dormant neural pathways still exist in most Talons. And how does this help us? Asked General Wu skeptically. Because humans independently developed musical patterns that activate these same pathways, Minho explained. Our traditional folk songs from cultures around the world contain similar harmonic structures. When Talons hear our music, it triggers responses they've been conditioned to fear and suppress. Do-hyun stood up beside them. We've been analyzing the Talon biological data. Their ship's communication systems are designed to transmit not just words but subtle emotional cues through harmonic undertones. It's part of how they maintain crew cohesion. If we can broadcast specific human musical patterns directly into their communication systems, Ji-won continued. You want to sing at an alien battle fleet? General Wu interrupted incredulously. Not just sing, Ji-won corrected. We want to remind them of who they were before they tried to engineer emotion out of their society. These songs once united their species. They might do so again. The plan was desperate, but with few alternatives, Earth's leaders authorized the attempt. For the next 48 hours, musicologists, neuroscientists, and communication experts worked frantically. They analyzed the ancient Talon musical patterns and matched them with human folk traditions, creating hybrid compositions designed to activate the aliens' dormant neural pathways. Meanwhile, engineers modified Earth's defense network to transmit these compositions directly into the Talon fleet's communication frequencies. Colonial defense stations were hastily equipped with specialized broadcasting equipment. At the Epsilon colony, tension mounted as the Talon fleet approached. Governor, Han oversaw final preparations, knowing her small outpost would be the first to face the alien armada. They've entered the system, reported Communications Officer Song Jin-young, watching the long-range scanners. 15 minutes until they're in range. In the colony's makeshift broadcast center, a group of musicians from various Earth cultures prepared their instruments. Traditional singers warmed up their voices. The hybrid compositions, combining ancient Talon harmonics with human emotional depth, were loaded into the communication systems. Admiral Kang's voice came through on the emergency channel. Epsilon Colony, this is Earth Command. The fleet is holding position just beyond Mars. We're monitoring the situation. You are cleared to initiate Operation Echo at your discretion. Governor Han looked at Ji-won, who had insisted on being present for this first contact. This plan of yours better work, Doctor. 20,000 lives depend on it. Ji-won nodded, her throat dry. It will work, she said with more confidence than she felt. The first Talon ships appeared in the colony's sky, massive shadows blotting out the stars. Colonial sensors detected weapon systems powering up. They're preparing to fire, Jin Young reported, voice steady despite the fear evident on his face. Governor Han took a deep breath. Initiate broadcast. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Talon ships continued their approach, weapons charged. Then suddenly their formation faltered. Several ships drifted out of position. They're responding, Jin Young said excitedly. Their communication channels are active but chaotic. I'm picking up unusual patterns in their transmissions. On the main view screen, they could see the Talon fleet's organized approach dissolving into confusion. Ships moved erratically, some slowing almost to a stop. Inside the alien vessels, the carefully engineered order of Talon society was unraveling. The music, human voices singing melodies that echoed patterns not heard in their civilization for millennia, flowed through their communication systems. Younger crew members, whose neural suppressions were less complete, experienced overwhelming emotional responses. Elder commanders struggled to maintain control as long-dormant neural pathways suddenly activated. It's working, Ji-won whispered, watching the data stream showing the disruption spreading through the Talon fleet. Then, unexpectedly, one of the alien ships broke formation entirely and moved closer to the colony. Defensive systems locked. On automatically. Hold fire, Governor Han ordered sharply. They're hailing us. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Talon vessel. The commander's skin rippled with colors Ji-won had never seen on a Talon before. Deep blues and golds rather than the usual silver and violet. What are you doing to us? The commander demanded, voice trembling with unfamiliar emotion. We're reminding you of who you once were, Ji-won replied simply. Before your society decided that feeling was dangerous, the Talon seemed to struggle internally before responding. These patterns, they awaken something. I don't understand what's happening. It's called emotion, Ji-won said gently. Your ancestors felt it deeply enough to write songs about it. Songs your leaders tried to erase. We need time, the commander said finally. The fleet will withdraw to neutral space while we process this phenomenon. As the transmission ended, relief flooded through the colony's command center. The Talon ships were already turning away, retreating from Epsilon. They're actually leaving, Jin Young said in disbelief. Governor Han turned to Ji-won. What happens now? I don't know, Ji-won admitted. But for the first time since we met the Talons, I think we're finally having a real conversation. The Talon fleet hung in space, a safe distance from Earth's colonies. 3 weeks had passed since the failed attack on Epsilon, and the alien armada remained in disarray. Some ships had returned to the Talon homeworld, while others maintained positions in neutral territory, their crews seemingly undecided about what to do next. On Earth, Ji-won stared out the window of the Global Response Center, watching rain fall over the Tokyo skyline. The room behind her buzzed with activity as analysts monitored communications from the Talon ships. They're fighting among themselves, Minho said, joining her at the window. Dark circles under his eyes revealed how little he'd slept lately. The younger ones want dialogue. The older leadership is pushing for isolation or even a renewed attack. It's not just a military crisis for them anymore, Jiwan replied. It's an identity crisis. Everything they believed about themselves is being questioned. Admiral Kang entered the room, tablet in hand. We're getting a new transmission from the Talon flagship. They're requesting a face-to-face meeting. The message came from a Talon who identified herself as Cultural Elder Vela. Unlike previous communications, she spoke without the usual cold formality. Her skin rippled with colors as she described the upheaval within Talon society. What you have awakened cannot be easily suppressed again, Elder Vela explained. The younger generations especially are demanding answers about our history. Many are experiencing emotions our society has not permitted for thousands of years. Within hours, arrangements were made. The meeting would take place on neutral ground, an uncolonized moon in the Jupiter system. Both sides would send small delegations, unarmed. As their shuttle approached the meeting site, Captain Park looked nervous. This could still be a trap, he warned. I don't think so, Jiwan said. You didn't see their faces when they heard our music. They weren't angry. They were awakened. The Talon delegation was already waiting when they arrived at the simple dome structure hastily constructed for the meeting. Elder Vela led their group, accompanied by several younger Talons, and to Jiwan's surprise, both Navan and Liren. Your Kyo species has preserved what we tried to destroy, Elder Vela said without preamble. Our connection to our past, to ourselves. The Elder's skin shifted through shades of blue as she spoke, displaying emotions that would have been suppressed in previous encounters. Our society made a choice thousands of years ago, she continued. After centuries of war, our leaders believed that strong emotions led inevitably to conflict. They began a program to remove these tendencies from our population, both culturally and biologically. You tried to engineer the humanity out of yourselves, Do-hyun suggested. We would not have used that term, but yes, Elder Vela acknowledged. We believed we were creating a perfect society, logical, orderly, without the chaos of emotion. We erased our war songs, modified our genetics, and created a civilization of peace through control. And then we showed up, Jiwan said. Yes, humans. So similar to what we once were. Full of passion, creativity, and fear, anger, love. All the things we had tried to eliminate. Our leadership saw you as a reminder of our chaotic past, a threat to our carefully constructed order. One of the younger Talons stepped forward. His skin rippled with gold and green patterns as he spoke. But when we heard your music, patterns so similar to our lost songs, something awakened in us. Neural pathways our society had suppressed for generations suddenly activated. The effect was strongest in the young, Liren added. Those with fewer generations of selective breeding. They began experiencing emotions their education never prepared them for. The fleet retreated because half our crews were in emotional crisis, Elder Vela admitted. Some experienced joy so intense they could not perform their duties. Others felt grief for something they couldn't name. Many simply wept. Captain Park looked skeptical. And now? Has your leadership abandoned plans to attack us? Our society is divided, Elder Vela said frankly. The Unity Council demands isolation from humans. The military caste still considers you a threat. But many, especially the young, are fascinated by what you've awakened in us. Jiwan glanced at Navan, who had remained silent until now. He stepped forward, skin shimmering with new complex patterns. I've been studying human culture since first contact, he said. What your music did wasn't an attack. It was liberation. For thousands of years we've been told that our ancestors' emotional nature led only to destruction. But your civilization proves that's not true. Humans feel deeply, Jiwan agreed. We love, we hate, we fear. Sometimes those emotions lead us into conflict, but they also drive us to create art, to explore, to connect with each other. In the days that followed, a remarkable exchange began. Young Talons came forward, eager to learn more about human music and culture. Jiwan and her team worked with them, carefully introducing emotional concepts that had been suppressed in Talon society. Meanwhile, Talon scholars shared recovered fragments of their ancient songs. Human musicians began incorporating these patterns into new compositions, creating hybrids that spoke to both species. "It's like they're remembering how to feel," Minho observed one evening, watching a group of young Talons listening to a Korean folk singer. Their skin rippled with colors as the music washed over them. "Not just remembering," Jiwon corrected. "Learning for the first time. Imagine growing up never knowing what it means to be moved by music." Not all Talons embraced this cultural awakening. The older generations especially resisted, warning that emotional indulgence would lead their society back to chaos and war. Some ships returned to the Talon homeworld, refusing further contact with humans, but others remained, forming what they called the Resonance faction. These Talons actively sought cultural exchange with humans, eager to reclaim the emotional heritage their society had tried to erase. 6 months after the failed attack on Epsilon Colony, Jiwon stood on a stage before a mixed audience of humans and Talons. Behind her, musicians from both species prepared to perform a newly composed piece combining ancient Talon harmonic structures with human emotional expressions. Elder Vela joined her at the center of the stage, her once silver skin now permanently tinged with the blue and gold of awakened emotional capacity. "When we first encountered humans," the elder said to the audience, "we believed ourselves superior. We looked at your emotional nature as primitive, a stage of development we had outgrown. Through science and careful breeding," she paused, new colors rippling across her skin in patterns that would have been unthinkable in any Talon just months earlier. "Instead, we found that humans carried what we had lost, the songs that made us who we once were. You preserved the emotional truth we tried to engineer away. In your music, we heard echoes of our forgotten selves." As the combined orchestra began to play, Jiwon watched the Talons in the audience. Their skin shimmered with colors, displaying emotions their society had once deemed dangerous. Some wept openly, experiencing grief and joy they had been denied. "For generations, we thought we were teaching them," she whispered to Minho, who stood beside her. "But maybe they're remembering what they always knew." The new human Talon Accord was signed the following day. It wasn't a perfect peace. Parts of Talon society remained hostile or wary. But it was a beginning, built on something more powerful than technology or military strength. "Our ancestors wrote songs to unite them in war," Elder Vela told Jiwon, as they watched the signing ceremony. "Now we use them to unite our peoples in peace. There is a symmetry to that which appeals even to our logical nature." "Music has always been how humans connect with each other across differences," Jiwon replied. "It's fitting that it's how we connect across the stars as well." As she spoke, the first notes of a new composition filled the hall, human voices and Talon harmonics intertwining, creating something neither civilization could have produced alone.